Hey everybody, and welcome to Chairman of the Board. Today I'm talking about Power Grid, which is a board game dating back to 2004. It's a Euro-style, economic-style game that takes about 2 hours to play. It accommodates 2 to 6 players. Now the game was designed by Friedman Fries, who is a pretty well-regarded designer, and this is one is considered his magnus opus. It's a game that's still talked about today, which is very impressive considering how old it is, and still very well and highly regarded and rated on Board Game Geek. So the idea of the game is that we are supposedly these energy and power tycoons who are building these powerhouses or power stations in the city or in the country even, and we're going to basically buy these power plants and get the resources to power those power plants, and when the game ends it's going to be the player who can power the most power plants is going to be the winner. Now mechanically the game is extremely simple, but it does have a lot to think about in it. Because you have a lot of things pulling you in different directions. It's mainly money driven because you're going to have enough money to buy these power plants. You want to have enough money to kind of spread your influence on the map. You want to have enough money to actually buy the resources to dispose of to power those power plants. And all these things are kind of conflicting, and you have to spread your money as equally as possible or as efficiently as possible to get maximum benefit from your power stations. So the game initially starts off with an auction phase where there's going to be 4 power stations up for auction basically, and you're going to choose one of those to start a bid on, and those are going to basically determine what resources are going to need to be exposed to power a certain amount of power stations. So for example, it might say trade in 2 coal to power 1 power station, and as the game develops they're going to get more and more powerful, but obviously more and more expensive in line with that, where it could be maybe tie in or trade in 2 uranium to power 5 power stations and stuff like that. So there's a real ramping up effect and a progression in the game that develops more and more as you go on, and that kind of that building of power is really palpable in this one. After that the game goes on to a kind of resource buying phase, because there's going to be, I think it's 4 different resources. You've got your coal, you've got your oil, you've got your garbage, and you've got your uranium as well, or something like that, I don't know, some kind of radioactive resource. And there's this really cool fluctuating resource market where, based on player order, they're going to go first, and you can basically snap up resources, and the more you snap up, the more expensive they get. So there's a real kind of supply and demand aspect that goes into it as well, which is you're going to have to kind of weigh up with the fact which power stations you have. You can only store a certain amount of resources based on double the capacity of your warehouses or your power stations, which can be really important. And your stocking up on resources can be important because it's going to make it more expensive for other players. But then going into the next phase of the game, you want to have enough money to build more power stations in the country, because you want to have the power stations equal to the amount of power stations you can actually power, because if you have one more than the other, then you're just going to have surplus resources and not be as efficient as you can be. So I really like that. There's a real mathematical element to this game where you do have to weigh up all those different costs. It's all money driven, as I said. The map itself is quite interesting, because you're going to have certain spots on the board that are going to cost 10 initially to build into, and then you can kind of spread your seed from there, going into these different cities which have connection costs. So and those connection costs can be a huge disparity in costs. So some might be as cheap as 3, and some might be as expensive as, I think it's even up to 20. And basically you can build out and keep accumulating the costs as long as you can afford it, and spread as far as you can. There are opportunities as the game goes on to get into the same cities as other players, but having to do so would be more expensive, which is really nice. So having to building places quicker is going to be a lot more beneficial and more cost effective, but at the same time you're going to have to weigh in the fact that you're probably going to have to sacrifice the more powerful power stations to actually to fuel those different buildings you're going to put down on the board. It's a game that really is boiled down into very few phases and a few turns, but the way it all comes together is genius, to be honest. The economy in this game is just gorgeously put together, and the weighting of all the different costs just feel perfectly balanced. The decisions in this game are so palpable because how much you're going to pay for these power stations. You want these powerful ones, but you're going to have to pay for them to do so. You've got to be willing to sacrifice or willing to let your opponents buy those stations if at the right price, because you don't want to be overpaying for anything in this one. You want to have that kind of focus yourself into a bit of a niche so that you're the only one buying a certain type of resource, because then you can get it at a cheaper kind of supply cost. You've got to weigh into the fact that at the end of each round, only a certain amount of resources are going to get deployed onto the board again, so that if everybody's going to keep buying the same resource at the end of the game, or at the end of each round, they're not going to redeploy as quickly as you can buy them. So the price is always going to be going up and up and up, which is just such a cool little nuance that you have to factor in your decisions. The time investment of the game, it takes 2 hours to play, but I think the progression of it really does keep you engaged, and you feel like you're really ramping up throughout the game, and there's no lulls in it. You don't feel like you're just biding your time trying to get through it, because, as I said, that ramping up each round is really strong in this one, because the more power stations you power, the more income you're going to get. And the idea of spending money to making money really does shine through in Power Grid. Replayability wise, the version I have is the original version. It has a double-sided board, and I think you could even buy loads more different boards for this one, so there's lots of replayability in that aspect. Scalability as well, I think I wouldn't play this one at 2 players, to be honest. I think that competition of the third player is needed in this one, but it even works well at higher player counts than that, which is not something you can say with a lot of Euro games. And the scalability factors in the number of regions on the board that are going to be used, because the less players, you want a tighter board, which means some regions are going to be kind of blocked out for the game. Interaction of the game is very good on this one. As I said, it's all about the kind of economic aspect to it. The auctioning is always a great way to just inject player interaction into the game. I love auctioning in general, and this one does it very well. And just the fierce competition of getting into those cities before your opponents do is great. Aesthetically, the original version looks pretty dry, to be honest. I don't think it's a great looking game, and some of the component quality is questionable as well. The board quality itself isn't great. It's pretty thin, and it has paper money, which is absolutely diabolical. The money in this game is horrendous, and I'll be looking to replace that in my version. But this is really a game about the component quality, not about the component quality, it's about the gameplay. And that gameplay completely overrides the aesthetic aspect of the game and the component quality. The theme works really well. I think it's quite simple to explain. It makes sense. You need the resources, you need the power stations, you need the factories, you need everything that goes together, and there's not a huge amount of rules overhead to explain to someone. I played this with a relatively inexperienced gamer, and they got it very simply, and I've got engaged pretty quickly, which is really nice. If I had to compare this to anything else, I suppose it's a real step on from a lot of those different economic games. The market in it is really great in this one. Games such as Raccoon Tycoon, or even the player I played it with even compared it to something like Monopoly. It's like a gamer's Monopoly, just that real kind of tycoon aspect to it, where you want to branch out and monopolize things and be the best and most powerful in the game. But in the same vein, it's still very different to those games. But I can see where they're coming from. But yeah, overall, this game is it is a classic for a reason. I really enjoyed my plays of this one. So much fun, but still so much to think about, really engaging. Probably not a game that I'll get to the table extremely often, because it is a bit longer and it has a slightly different feel that has a more, a strategic feel to it, rather than a real kind of whimsical fun side of feel to it. But I do love that kind of aspect to it, and I love the feel. I think it's a really great economic engine, very well designed, and just a credit to the hobby. One that's going to stick around for ages to come, and it's just a really great game that's going to stay in my collection and be a staple of it for years and years to come. So that is Power Grid by Friedman Freeze. An excellent game. It gets an excellent verdict from me, and people have been harking on at me for a long time to give this one a go, and I'm so glad I have now. I can see why it's so well regarded, because it's just well put together in every aspect, and just yeah, just a great game. So that concludes my review of Power Grid. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye.